everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event.
Athletes, huddle up. It's time to begin. Get focused. Let's go.
Anyway, Marissa, welcome to Overtime with Coach Blue and Athletic Director Marissa. We're finally here.
Hello.
You think after 5 years of this, we would have had this dialed in, so we got to go back to school or something.
Updates everywhere all the time.
Yeah, seriously, you get used to a platform and they change it and so on and so forth. But hey, who cares? We are here overtime. This is your chance to jump on, chat with Coach Blue, Athletic Director Marissa, about anything that pertains to addiction recovery, mental health issues, relationships, sports and athletics. I mean, shoot, right? We got lots of different talents here.
Whatever we know, we'll share.
Marissa Robinson is a certified recreational therapist, and I have a degree in mental health counseling and addictions counseling.
Yes.
Got two. What happened there?
You just started going to school. And
I guess I fell in love with school, not. Nonetheless, everybody, thank you so much for those who have already submitted your questions. We've got a few here we want to get through today. But before we do, we want to share a little bit of love to all of our Patreon subscribers. You guys are the backbone of the podcast, and if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't really have a lot of outlet for this thing. And so your donations and your contributions help push this podcast out further. And hey, you get something in return, right?
Yes.
Patreon's cool, kind of a cool platform. It's set up in different tiers, and you pick one that works best for you. And each tier comes with a bonus, like merchandise, some flattery, all kinds of fun stuff.
Exclusive episodes, lots of things.
Yeah, and $2 a month if you just want the bare basics.
Yeah.
We'll get you all the bonus content. And there's some deep stuff in there. So
yeah. It's like $16 a year if you pay up front. There's a discount. So, I mean, really can't miss anything. And that helps us be able to host this, get all the production side, which is a lot. So we want to thank all of our Patreon subscribers, and we are going to go start with our champions. We want to thank Shad and Freya Robinson and Andrew Baird. Then our pro level is Justin Robbins. Our rookies, we want to thank them: Earl Dyer, Wendell Wood, Brad Waldron, Ron and Dee Loesch, and Sione and Mary Inuk. And our super fans: Karen Hardy, Steve Riggs, Jerem Thurston, Tara Butson, Holly Davies, Scott Foster, Chris Williams, Sensei KP Brown, Patrick Forsyth, Brock Ellerman, Christy Case, Kel Lim, and Faith Davis.
Man. Coach Chris is like off globetrotting. Did you see her photos?
She was like in India or something.
I don't know. Coach, where are you? Wherever she was, it looked pretty epic. So
yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. If you want to jump on there and check out the Patreon program, jump on patreon.com/addictoathlete. And yeah, we'll get you some good stuff coming your way.
A lot of bonus stuff.
As always, we want to thank everybody for all the support through Recovery Month. We're right in the middle of Sober October. And this also presets all of our efforts for the year to start leaning towards Project ELF, which is what we do here on Team Addict Athlete to help individuals who may have had some struggles with, money issues, finances that have been kind of tight due to like the craziness that is the world in 2023. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So our Project ELF is open now. So
yes. So if you are interested, this year we are taking nominations for families. So if you know of a family in need in the Wasatch Front of Utah area, please contact me, Marissa, at addictathlete.org, or you can DM us on any of our socials and give us the family you think needs some help and why, and we will work at getting an application out to you. The earlier the better. We have lots of people that are willing and here to help, but we need to know stuff ahead of time. So
yeah, and again, it's one of these things that we're able to give back to the program simply by all the donations and the donors. So I want to thank everybody for all the support you've given us throughout the years. So yeah, good stuff coming up. Hey, we got some good questions coming in. And it was funny because I looked at the home base page, which is kind of like Addict to Athlete's closed group.
Yep.
We have like 20 different pages on here, I swear.
Yeah, that's our general.
Our general page is kind of the home base. It's funny, out of 80 of you that looked at this today, only one person dared to ask a question.
Maybe everyone else has figured out the problem.
I know, so why aren't they giving solutions, right?
Yeah.
Come on, athletes. So it was kind of a cool one. This is Deanna. Deanna says, how are some ways to get through the holidays? That is a big question.
Yeah.
And 'tis the season because now it all begins now, right?
Yeah, this is
you have
beginning.
Halloween, which is like the take your mark. You got the Thanksgiving, which is get set, right? And then Christmas is the go.
Yeah, true.
And then New Year's is like it's too late to turn around, right?
Yeah.
So let's jump into that a little bit. Holidays can be a make or break for a lot of folks in recovery, specifically if you're in early recovery. Now, there are a lot of people out there that are going to give you a bazillion and 3 different options and paths you can take for this, but the clear path that I've always chosen is to make sure that you are first and foremost practicing self-care, making sure that you are in a mental space, an emotional space to start to handle these kind of things. And typically, for some reason, Thanksgiving typically is the one that brings out most of the emotion, which is funny because we don't have those kind of Thanksgiving dinners where it's like, tons of family from each side. I mean, everyone's kind of doing their own thing, which is, sad and good all in the same way. Yeah. So there's not a lot of I guess QAnon debates going on with the crazy uncle whoever or, all that stuff. And so, but it can be a huge trigger for a lot of the emotional dumping throughout one's family system.
Yeah, or just missing family members who aren't there anymore. And there's a lot to holidays.
Absolutely. And that's a big one too, because, again, with the opiate epidemic, with the fentanyl issues and overdose rates, chances are that many of you guys will probably be having and celebrating these holidays maybe without a loved one. And that in and of itself can be a struggle. Yeah. The first anniversaries, the first experiences without typically are the hardest, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there's that missing void you feel. So first and foremost, I'd say before you even try to attempt or pursue any kind of holiday cheer, make sure that you're okay and
check
prepping now, right?
Yeah, check in with yourself. A lot of times people get so overloaded with things you have to do or you're expected to do or you need to do, even with we're talking about inflation and the stress of finances causing such an issue and problem. But you have to take care of yourself first. So if you don't, take some time doing some things you enjoy. Maybe it's just going for a drive, listening to some music really loud, going to get a drink and talking to a friend. I mean, they don't need to be big or extravagant or expensive. Yeah, it'd be nice to go to the Bahamas. That would be good self-care for me, but we can't really afford it. So sometimes you have to start little and just get out in nature and do something that you enjoy.
So plan ahead. Everything right now, and that's why I'm glad this question is being asked now. Plan ahead. There's always a time for you to take a little bit of a personal inventory on what could, what might, what should happen during these experiences.
What do you expect will happen at Thanksgiving dinners? You have a plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the problem with not having a plan like that is if you go in kind of like shooting from the hip, you're bound to have an issue that you weren't really ready for. And that alone can make or break a recovery process, right? Yeah. So planning ahead kind of makes it look like you've got a little bit of a playbook plan. Yeah. And on a Team Addict Athlete, we have our own recovery playbook, and we kind of go through some of these things. Planning ahead means that you have an escape route, you have a path, you have like a buddy system, right?
Yep. A follow-up, a check-in. You go to a family party and alcohol comes out, and you don't think you're ready to be around that. What are you going to do? Yeah. How are you going to make up an excuse to leave or just say, hey, I can't be around this and leave, call an Uber, just have a plan. Yeah.
This is also a good time for you to start increasing your support. You've got to increase your support, meaning Team Addict Athlete, sponsors, whoever you have in your corner that's kind of a neutral player. Increase your contact with them because you can get overwhelmed with the craziness of all this kind of stuff. And if you don't have someone that you can just vent with, and sometimes it's not just like, venting all over them, but just having someone that knows, that understands your situation is a big one. And I would use people that are a little bit less likely to give strange advice. And what I mean by that is, make sure that you're wanting to be listened to, not given advice towards. Does that make sense? Which is kind of a crazy thing, right? Most of us guys want to solve problems like that. So if someone brings a problem to a male, typically what we'll do is just don't go. Well, that's not really an option, Todd. I've got to, I got to go, right?
Or give you a fix-it. When sometimes you just need somebody to listen and empathize and, understand that's got to be hard, Yeah.
Yeah. You got to be mindful of the time that you spend around your relatives. You've got to know your limits. This is a big one because, for many of you guys that know me, the principle I live my life by is it's a privilege to have a relationship, not a right. And just because it's a holiday doesn't make it any different than another day of the week to me. And so there has to be a mutual understanding of love and respect. And if there's not going to be, then I'm not going to grace your presence. Yeah. That sounds super like narcissistic, but can you see how that definitely plays a path into like keeping yourself like on a spot where you're okay?
You have to keep yourself safe. And again, it goes both ways. It's a privilege for you to have a relationship with those other family members. And if you don't treat them correctly and you don't treat them with respect, they back out as well. So it has to be reciprocated, and you want to be around people who treat you well.
Yeah. And so when you look at those kind of situations and you start to invest in relationships, make sure you're getting something back. I like what Dr. Paul talks about with the 3 boxes. And when you look at it, you kind of think of it this way.
Yeah.
Remember that time you guys all went to Vegas? Like everyone watching this has been to Vegas, right? Well, let's say that who's in there watching? Anybody watching? I'm going to call someone. Faith. All right. Yeah. Faith is going to Las Vegas. Faith. And you walk into the casino, you're a high roller because you just got paid, right? So you got money bursting out of your pockets. And Faith walks up to the very first machine. She puts $100 in that machine. She pulls the handle, all the bells, all the whistles, all the ding, ding, dings, and out comes $0. But Faith is like, hey, no big deal. Second time, let's go, man. So she puts another $100 in. She pulls the handle, all the bells, the whistles, ding, 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 and all of a sudden out comes $0. Yeah. So Faith is like, all right, third time's a charm. So she puts another $100 in. She pulls the handle, all the bells and whistles, ding, ding, ding. Out comes $0. Well, you can't end on an odd. You got to at least end on an even. So she puts another $100. And you see where this is going, right? Every time she puts 100 in, nothing comes out. But she keeps feeding the machine because she's really excited and hoping that maybe this is the time.
Yeah.
But nothing comes out.
If she loses so many times, she's got to win sometime.
The odds.
Try again.
Right? Yeah. And so maybe the person next to her is fed up too, and they leave, and so Faith slides over to the next machine, and she puts the $100 into that machine, pulls the handle, and out comes $100.
$100.
Hey,
that's good.
Now we're talking.
Yeah,
because it's better than number one.
Yeah, just took all of her money.
So she puts $100 in, she pulls the handles, all the bells and whistles, out comes $100. $100 in, pull the handle, $100 out.
Yeah.
Starts looking at the $100. Is this the same bill? Like, what's going on here?
But she's not losing.
No, and that's a good thing, right?
That's a good thing.
But how entertaining and how long would you feed that machine before you kind of predict that, like, nothing's changing? I'm here just to enjoy the scenery, I guess.
The whole point of this is to make money. So.
Absolutely. If you're gambling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to make it.
And then who knows how long she's there, but then she slides over to the third box and she puts the machine into that. She puts the money into that machine, pulls the handle, bells and whistles, out comes $200.
Wow, there she goes.
Finally.
She's stepping up.
She puts another $100 in, pulls the handle, out comes $200. So now she starts getting brave. She puts that $200 in, pulls the handle, out comes $400.
Wow.
She takes that $400, puts it in, out comes $800.
This is a good thing.
I haven't seen Faith in years. She's probably still sitting at that machine, right?
I would be
You wouldn't leave.
I'd stay there.
You wouldn't leave. But those are like relationships. When you think about them in terms of relationships, how many of you out there that aren't mindful about the people you're hanging out with in relationships? You're investing this emotional currency into them and you're getting nothing in return. You're getting, maybe even negative to a certain point. Like nothing is coming back.
You're the one that's, giving all of your emotional currency. You're giving all of your, maybe even financial currency, really, and helping and giving and loving. And, that takes a toll on anyone.
It does.
Yeah, you want to do it for a time, for sure. Everyone likes to give and be helpful and serve others.
Yep.
But it gets tiring.
It does. And so we have to understand that when you move from that first machine where you're investing and getting nothing in return, so many people hang on to those relationships because, like you said, they're just waiting. Like statistically speaking, it has to pay out.
It has to get better, right?
But it doesn't.
And
So for me, being mindful of relatives that I spend time with, that was one of the biggest things with my mother. Is like I knew that if I spent time with her, I was putting in a bill and I was going to lose on my return. I was getting nothing. I wasn't even breaking even.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have that, but it wasn't happening. And so when we talk about this, when you move over to that even Stevens machine.
100 in, 100 out.
Yeah. But what happens in that relationship? It tends to get stagnant, right?
Very true. Yeah.
But here's the deal too, right? It doesn't mean that when you invest $100 of emotional currency into someone, they give you 2 back, that you just take that 100 and put it back in. No, that means now you take that 200 and you give them that back, and then they get. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's a reciprocal kind of relationship.
Mutually beneficial. This is one of those Stephen Covey win-win relationships.
Because then that person can invest in you and you can do the same. So what kind of person are you? What kind of families do you have? So be mindful of the time that you spend around relatives and know your limits and know kind of where you're investing your emotional currency.
Well, when you talk about your mom too, you had to take time to assess that. Finally, there's a lot of times that you just interact in relationships you're used to and you just keep going and not even recognizing how draining it can be, and not recognizing how much you're giving and not getting anything in return. So it's going to take some time that you maybe need to sit down and evaluate the relationships in your life and the people in your life and say, hey, is this helpful to me? Am I willing to give and not get anything in return? How long am I willing to give? Or do I want to maybe shift my focus and move on and work on other relationships that may be more mutually beneficial?
Absolutely. And I don't want you to ever think of it in terms, and I've heard this, I heard another person online talking about that you can't drink or you can't hang around with that person, you can't do these things. And that word is kind of stupid when you think about it, because you can hang around that person. You can go stand right next to him, you can play Yahtzee, you can do whatever you want. You can still drink. In fact, you have every mechanism, a throat, a mouth, everything to do that. So when we say I can't hang around these or I can't go over there, what it means is that you're taking the victim role out of it. I just can't. There's a difference when you stand up for yourself and you say, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to hang out with that person.
It's a way to take back your personal power.
The English language is kind of funny, and we think, well, what is the biggest difference? I can't versus I'm not going to. It's still promoting the same thing, but it's
taking
not.
That power. Absolutely.
It seriously is. Also, what I'd say to get through the holidays is boost up your service. And not really for yourself, but for everyone around you. And you're going to have a reciprocal effect of that too. Like you will feel better, right?
Yeah.
And service out of your inconvenience is the best kind. And I would say step into a slice of service that you haven't done before.
Yeah, try
like
something new.
If you are involved in a church organization, right? That's a great way to serve, but it's also kind of familiar. What if you were to step way out of your comfort zone and serve, the Women's and Children's Justice Center, or the homeless population, or the Boys and Girls School, whatever, Team Addict Athlete. If you were to step out of the comfort zone of service, you might find that although the feeling's the same, like the benefits are even more far-reaching. And I think sometimes we get a little bit caught in that sometimes, where we just get service, fatigue, so to speak.
Yeah, true.
And this is something that might help you break some of that mold.
Something new.
Creating new traditions. If for some reason your relationship with a family system is so unhealthy, now is the time for you to create something that you've always wanted to do, or something that you might not have thought of before, because it's time for you to kind of create your own path and create your own tradition.
Yeah.
Traditions are funny because who are they really for, right? I mean, we always used to go up to see the Christmas lights in downtown Salt Lake City, and because they've had construction up there now for the past 17 trillion years, it seems like we haven't done that. And we've had to create alternative traditions. Yeah. And it's good. I think that we should be cautious of traditions to a certain point too.
Well, because I think they lock us into things, thinking it's just it's such a custom in our family. We have to do it. Do you? Maybe there's some traditions that aren't, feeding your soul, feeding you and your family members, that aren't really super helpful, that maybe you could look at changing.
I have heard some funny traditions too that are just super emotionally damaging, and I'm like, you subject yourself to that? But it's good to celebrate and focus on your new reestablishment of life, and something that you can kind of affirm and testify that's yours now. Yeah. And if it's you by yourself, if it's you with a friend or other family member, that's the point to do it, right? That's the time. Yeah.
And if it means that you adopt another one that somebody else has, guess what? Traditions aren't exclusive to certain families. Like you see other families doing something and you're like, that looks really fun. Go ahead and do it.
Exactly.
It's not just theirs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, there's no way possible for anyone to avoid triggers for relapse during these situations. You have to understand that no matter how much inventory you take, there will be a trigger that you didn't count for. So before that happens, before you even try to attest to that, just really make up your mind that using is not an option. Because you will be triggered. Because you might scroll through social media and see the pictures of everybody together that you decided not to go to, and that might be the guilty cord that's pulled, right?
Yeah.
But really, you can't plan for every trigger, so it'd be impossible to even say to do so. But what you can do is make up that decision beforehand. Like we said, planning ahead.
Yeah.
And that's by making sure your sobriety or recovery is the top of your list.
Yeah. Being able to identify what are some coping skills you're going to use or utilize when things do get frustrating, when you do get super stressed. So it doesn't matter what the trigger or craving is, that you have a go-to to attack it.
And last but not least, the commercial world wants to convince you that it's all about the boozing and the drinking and the celebrating with intoxicants, and instead of like focusing on what's really important. And so make sure you maintain a certain sense of spirituality, it's connection to something bigger than you, whether it's, snowshoeing out there, whether it's, nature and hitting the gym, whether it's service. Make sure that you have something that can kind of testify to the majesty that is the sobriety you've created.
Yeah.
And if that works, go jump in and talk to a professional. We'll help you get through. Because right now also, Marissa, with the changing of the seasons, with the disconnect between sunlight and and nighttime, we're seeing a huge issue with seasonal depressive disorder.
This is kind of the beginning of that season, that sadness season for a lot of people. So make sure you have a plan on how to combat it, And
one thing you've always kind of like said that I love, and I can't give anyone out there medical advice, but what I would say is that there are some neat supplements, like these things called vitamins you can take that really do help. Things like vitamin D.
Yeah.
Like if you are prone to seasonal depression, now it's time to jump into some of the supplements out there, like the vitamin D. Yeah. And the thing about vitamin D is it takes an awful long time for it to metabolize and absorb into your body
and start working. So it can take 2 to 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's one that you have to really start taking.
You got to get on it now and just kind of stay consistent with it.
Yeah. And do some research on what levels. Maybe go to get some levels done at your doctor and ask what they suggest. I know for years I'd always heard vitamin D was so good and you should just try it. So I was like, I don't notice anything. Well, then I found out I was taking like 100 IU units of vitamin D, and when I went to my doctor, he's like, you need 15,000.
You could take a handful of vitamin D, yeah.
So I was really off. No wonder it wasn't helping, and so you need to find out what works for you, and there are a lot of new things out there that do.
Well, and a few months ago, I got myself into quite a pickle with some health issues, specifically high blood pressure and stuff. And the doctor's like, you've got to start pursuing a lifestyle that's not conducive to major stress. And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen.
Difficult.
And so, talking with our doctors and just with Marissa and what we've done is, increased all the vitamin Ds. I specifically like magnesium has like changed my life. Magnesium is a great supplement that I don't think gets enough credit. And so, magnesium helps lower some anxiety. It helps rest. It helps kind of get you to a sleep state. I think it's better than melatonin.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the nightmares that typically happen if you take too much of that stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a lot more calming, and you often can feel the effects of it a lot quicker, like within a week or two.
Yeah.
If you're on the right dosage. For me, I prefer magnesium glycinate. I know there's another one. I haven't tried it yet. Magnesium L-threonate that's supposed to be really good for that, and you should try it sometime.
Yeah. But that's the thing too. And one of the other things was changing lifestyle, which was, ditching caffeine, which was not as hard as I thought when I started realizing that, my heart's just going a little bit too hard. And so it's been a long time since I've had caffeine, but this is the cool thing is like, take the time now to do you, right? Chat with your doctor.
It's so funny too.
It.
So I have to, because he's never slept well. Blue's never slept well.
Go figure.
Never. And he's always just like, why? Caffeine's not if I quit caffeine, it doesn't help. It calms me down. It helps me sleep easier, sleep better. Well, guess what? He quit caffeine and he just goes to sleep at night.
Well, plus I'm taking my metric weight in magnesium. So,
yes, but like, That's a big deal that like you would be up till 2, 3 in the morning and now like you fall
now
asleep
I'm only up
before
till
me.
1:30. Yeah.
It's a little shocking.
Absolutely. So there's a lot you can do, but there's not a magic path. You've got to put in the effort for all this kind of stuff. But those are some of the tips that I would say will help you maintain. And again, there's probably some of you out there that don't have this problem, but some of you that do. And so let's get some dialogue going and let's get some connections made so that we all can kind of connect together. So our other question that we want to get
that
to
helps answer your question.
Yeah, our other question we want to get to comes from our main man walking across this fine country, who's made it across and now decided to walk down the country.
Yeah,
right?
crisscross it.
Yeah,
he's
crisscrossing. Kendall, who is actually right now taking our sober coach training too.
Yes, he is.
I got a call coming up with him soon. And in fact,
Kendall,
if you're out there, I had to reschedule your call. So, shoot me a DM, brother. We gotta reschedule.
I think he only has one more module left.
Sweet. So he's doing great. He's almost done then.
Cruising.
Yeah. He's going to be our walk-in coach out there.
Our mobile recovery coach.
Yeah, but he brought up a really good question. It was kind of a funny one because it's something that like I don't really think of until it's like staring me in the face, And
it kind of goes along a little bit with Deanna's question.
It does. It totally does. And so, Kendall says, how do you handle everything that you do? Talking to us between, Addict to Athlete, all the events, being a therapist and hearing about heartbreaking stories, or pretty much, a daily basis on top of being a spouse, a family. Like, how do you maintain your own mental health without breaking down? And Lord have mercy.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, you guys have to understand that Addict to Athlete was based completely on the premise of being able to take self-care, being able to create, I'm going to say play back into an adult role. Yeah. But it was also on the foundation of my family always comes first, always.
Yeah.
And I remember telling my kids when they were little that if they needed me, if they needed you, if it doesn't matter if it was a church calling, if it was a job, if it was a big important meeting, if my kids ever said, "Dad, I need you home, I need you," I'm gone.
Yeah.
Like no ifs, ands, or buts. I would walk, and I've done that before. I've walked down to meetings. I've left work.
Yeah.
I was talking to an athlete yesterday that was talking about this, and he was a little bit disappointed I wasn't able to make an event with him that I really wanted to go to, but the kids decided that it was going to be an amusement park Lagoon Day.
Yeah.
And so
we hadn't done a lot as a family all summer, and that was like the only day
I will always choose them first. And I've gotten in hot water for leaving meetings and stuff before, but oh well, that's just the way that I've always done it. So for me, making sure that my priority list is set straight is a big part. It's funny because Lee Palmer, said, "Hey, what we do is for to keep ourselves balanced and all that kind of stuff. We kind of put our faith and our works into God."
Yeah, spirituality.
And I like that too. But faith without works is kind of idle. We've got to do our part. We've got to keep ourselves in a space where we're not biting off more we can chew. And I'm a classic example of doing that.
Yeah.
But for me, my priority list is set, I would believe, pretty straight, which means that my priority list, when I ask people this question a lot in counseling and therapy, I said, well, what's on your priority list? And they'll go through a massive amount of items and peoples and places and things that are so important, and they never put themselves on that list.
All external things. Yeah.
And so for me, it's kind of an interesting dynamic because like Lee's saying here, first and foremost, my highest priority is my connection with God. It's my higher power, my direction. I've got to be okay with him, the person that kind of has given me all this.
Yeah.
And I've got to put him first. If I can put him first, then I'm coming second. Which is kind of funny because it's like, oh, wait a minute, holier than thou. What are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
No, because if I can put myself second and kind of like keep my head to that central, like I call it the North Star, then third comes Marissa. You're third on my list.
Yay. Oh, that's why am I not?
Absolutely. But what happens if I put you first and I put God way down on the list, and then I put job maybe number 2, and what happens?
Things get out of whack.
They do. They get out of balance. It's like your whole planet starts to shift, and you start messing everything up. Your rotation's all off. And then the kids come in, in no particular order. Sometimes they're, fourth. The oldest is fourth. Sometimes she's like the seventh. Mm-hmm. but they are in no particular order because it's kind of like interchangeable that way. Absolutely.
Depending on their needs and yours. Yeah.
And then comes our relationships with things, my priorities and my relationship with things like this, like our program, all this kind of stuff. So knowing where my priorities are has really helped me. But even more so, being able to let counsel in, specifically from Marissa, has helped. She's kind of like a shepherd when it comes to like making sure I don't bite off more than I can chew, because there's times when I really want to. In fact, we were going to go down and do some touring down south for the eclipse, and get in the car and drive down and do all this kind of stuff. And it hit me that like I have not had a weekend at home since the beginning of September, and I'm like, this is insane. And it's funny because people would always call me like, "Wow, you are everywhere." I'm like, "Yeah, I am." But then I'm like,
it's exhausting.
That's exhausting. It really is. And
it's fun, but it gets old.
But it's also it's a challenge. And so, putting your priorities in line and making sure that you know why you're doing this. I can tell you out there, I've never felt burned out. Not one time. And when I did get close to that burnout and I was like ready to throw in the towel is kind of when I switched jobs and made things a little bit better.
We reassessed what was going on.
But I've never been burned out. I can only like attribute that to like my physical, my emotional, my mental, and my spirituality.
Yeah, having that balance in all of those is so important. So important. And I think like I look at that question and I think a lot of it is our communication. Like, you're my therapist, I'm yours. It goes a little back and forth, and being able to, sometimes you think you have to do something big, but sometimes it's just talking about it at the end of the day to like decompress and go through your day, your frustrations, and just get it out is such a big deal. And that can be with a professional, it can be with a spouse, it can be with a friend, it can be sometimes in the car just talking to yourself. Yeah. I talk to myself a lot.
We have to always be willing to accept some feedback, right?
Yeah. I mean, and just getting it out like makes you feel so much better.
Yeah, there not too long ago, maybe a year or so ago, Marissa kind of gave me some critical feedback, and she's like, "You're kind of being a jerk." And I'm like, "What? How am I being a jerk?" And it was funny because that was about the time when the health was kind of getting weird and wacky, and there was some stuff that I wasn't dealing with, within my own kind of like, I guess, pursuit of getting the program up and running, all this kind of crazy stuff. And, along with like some deficiencies in sleep and in, all kinds of stuff.
I was just like, your fuse is a little shorter than it's ever been.
And I had not noticed that. And it was funny because to me, I thought, well, this is just who I am. But it was so gradual and so slow that if I wasn't willing to take feedback, then none of that would have probably changed, And so that's the other thing too, is being able to have someone that truly can be your support, but also kind of be, the whip sometimes.
And trusting that somebody else maybe can look in and see something different because you're so close to it that you can't see the changes or the issues that are maybe coming to the surface.
Yeah.
You've got to have some trusting relationships to be able to do that.
Well, and it's funny though, because there's this few situations that have happened recently where each one of our kids has kind of like, had conversations with us, and it's just been really kind of like out of the blue and kind of like super like therapeutic to a certain degree. Like last night we were having a conversation with our daughter, Savannah, and she's a hoot. She's before her time, as we talked about before. If you listen to the Minor League podcast, you've probably heard that. But it was funny though, because the way that we've been able to parent and raise them has been very kind of like, choice based and emotionally invested. And it's funny.
Don't think, sometimes I sit back and think we haven't done a lot, and then I see the things they say or how they react in situations, and I was like, I don't think we can take credit for all of it, but like obviously there's been some influence there that I'm like really impressed, like that they just have opinions, and sometimes she talked to me about some things yesterday before you got home from work that I don't fully agree with, and she's fully invested in believing, and I'm like, I love that she has a different opinion than I do, and she's okay to share that with me.
Why wouldn't you shut her down and tell her that she's wrong then?
Because I want her to have differing opinions and thoughts on the world. And
this is
sometimes
deal.
it's a little frustrating, but yesterday it was kind of comical because I was like a little shocked by it. But I mean, you have to be able to let them think and have their own views on things, and that's how they can come to real conclusions about life, and not just being able to trust themselves because they've been able to work through things themselves rather than just being a copycat of mom and dad.
Well, this is the thing too, is like, we've talked about this on prior podcasts, is that, we've got the neighbors just across the street and down a few houses that are in the news right now for being very abusive to their children, all 8 of them, I guess, right? 8 passengers.
Or so. Yeah.
And, listening to, I remember when Savannah would come home from their house and she'd be like, holy crap, you guys got to hear this.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that individual is putting the biggest wedge in between her and her family. I don't know for what.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of gauge what kind of parent you are when your kids leave the house. If they never want to come back and see you, you might have failed, right? Or I always say this, and I shouldn't say this on the air, but I'm going to anyway. It's like the Menendez brothers, right? These guys killed their parents in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know the whole story. You're like, hey, there's more to that. But I don't know. But I've always thought if one of our kids walked into the other kid's room and said, hey, I'm thinking about killing mom and dad, and they didn't hesitate, they're like, I'm in.
Let's go.
Maybe there's something we're not doing that's right. I'd want my kid to be like, hey, wait a minute. Whoa, why?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm thinking,
shouldn't agree with that.
When we have conversations with our kids and we treat them with respect and we parent out of our inconvenience, you can have some really cool things. There's stuff that our kids do that I don't agree with either, but I'm okay with it because they get to make their choice. I remember one time working with youth and I was in a family session group, and this father said, I was kind of getting in with him, and he says, what I'm really not wanting my son to do is drag my good name through the mud. And oh my gosh, Marissa, that pissed me off.
I remember this.
I'm like, how? And I said to him, how good is your name if this is where we're at right now? And he got so offended. But it's like, dude, what kind of narcissistic, your son is struggling. And his behaviors and his actions are telling you something, and you're not even listening because you're too worried about what comes after your first name.
Mm-hmm.
Craziness, right?
Yeah.
So,
and making a comment like that, like, what have you done to your own name, sir?
Yeah. So when you're making adjustments and you're making changes, like, do your best to find that North Pole for you, like that priority list.
Yeah.
I want to have good relationships with the people I come in contact. And believe it or not, there are people out there that don't like me, and that's fine too. I'm okay with that because sometimes there's things that we say and we do that we don't agree with that, like, you may not agree with, you might agree with, and you're like, hey, the heck with that person.
Or maybe they don't know the whole story and the whole picture, and that means they may be upset with the parts they see, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and so when you're engaged in those kind of things, the thing I've given up on is trying to convince people that my way is the right way, because that's kind of blowhardy, and I'm like, just go do you. It's kept us out of a lot of like discussions that could potentially be relationship ending. That's why it's like I see people that get all up in arms about, again, politics and religion, and they post all this crap, and I'm like, dude, no one cares except the person that doesn't dare challenge you. And so I'm not even going to bat an eye at it.
And the emotions may be high, obviously, in most situations, but take a minute, step back and kind of evaluate, like, how much weight are you going to give that situation or that issue or that person? And, are you going to allow it to really affect you and your emotions and your mental health and your state?
It's an interesting thing that you bring up there, because one of the things I do is I just move on. Like, I don't need you, right? I move on, which is kind of good and bad, I guess. Because what I've noticed is, like, if you're unwilling to treat my beliefs, my thoughts with respect, even if you don't agree with them, if and you're, like, maybe you're directing comments or posts or whatever towards me, I'm like, I'm moving on. I don't need you. And that's a good and bad quality, right? Because I've not had a lot of that growing up, so I'm okay with moving on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm totally fine. I'm like, I can be completely happy with just the people that are, in my immediate surrounding. I don't need it.
Yeah.
But then there's also that part of, like, should I circle back and be like, let's invest, let's talk, let's, because I know I could do that.
Assessing those relationships and who, like, do I really trust that person's feedback? Do I care about a long-term relationship with that person to assess it
Well,
and do something different.
When people get into those kind of situations, again, politics, religion, just like their own truth, so to speak. I find that it's not worth my time to debate those situations because, again, I'm not going to be a blowhardy, soapboxy kind of person. I'm not going to wear it on my sleeve, but I'm also not going to be disrespected by the individual.
Yeah.
But I think the side of that that's not good is that I'm okay never talking to you again. I'm totally fine with it, which isn't a good thing either, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Give me some advice. If I'm sitting at a dinner table with some family or, a mom or whoever, right?
Yeah.
And it's just not turning out that way. Like, do I walk away and say good riddance? Good day, sir? Or do you?
Maybe you need to walk away for the time being and then evaluate, reassess how important. Because, if it's just somebody on social media, some troll, like saying how bad they hate you, like, really, what's the point?
No, I don't care
of,
about
like,
that stuff.
fighting back with that. But if it's somebody in a relationship that you really have invested in and care about, and maybe you trust their feedback or not, then maybe you have to evaluate their, what they're saying and take it with a little more weight. But
What's wild about this too, and again, we're kind of drifting back into Deanna's kind of like question.
Holiday.
But like, it is interesting when you get family systems or even like close friends that really want to rub your nose in their own opinions. And it's like, I have enough respect for people that are close to me not to, and I used to do this a lot. I used to love controversy and I used to post a bunch of stuff. I haven't done that in years because I'm like, you know what my views are don't matter to them. Does that make sense? Absolutely. And so I always find it kind of interesting when people start posting things that are super controversial and stuff. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you are just bringing this weird kind of like desire to debate and to see who are the people that agree with you and who don't. Like,
sometimes I look at
weird thing.
How sad of a life.
Yeah.
Like, you're just trying to cause commotion and chaos and anger. Like, how unhappy are you inside that that's what you're trying to share with the world?
Yeah.
Like, that's sad.
I see this a lot too on social media, and it's hard for me. I have to bite my tongue quite a bit to not engage, especially when they're strangers. When they talk about things that are precious to me, and I'm like, you know what? I'm moving on. You're not going to listen anyway. Which is funny. But what I've noticed,
I've had to do a lot of time choosing my battles.
What I've noticed is that I have done that a lot in the past, and it's rubbed off on the kids because our youngest Camden was telling me about a little conversation he got involved with. I'm like, dude, don't go there. Like, let me tell you what's happened to me when I've done this. It's kind of funny, rounding that whole circle back to the forefront of like, there are times when we could probably put our foot in our mouth, right?
Yeah.
But
and
nonetheless,
we've influenced our kids maybe too much.
Nonetheless, I would say the best thing you can do, Kendall, when you're wondering how to keep yourself balanced, is to not run faster than you have the energy, to not bite off more than you can chew, to leave things better than when you found them.
I think it's also finding things you enjoy and trying new things. Our likes and interests change as well, and finding simple things that can bring you joy and happiness and calming, whether that's, just like watching funny TikToks at the end of the day. That like
playing
makes
Batman
my
on the
whole
Xbox.
day. Playing Batman on the Xbox. Going for a walk. Like going and skipping rocks in a lake or a pond. Like, there doesn't need to be huge things. And if trying different things to just, give yourself some time.
And then I would say practicing relationships before rules, which is not an easy thing to do. And most people don't understand that. That could be a podcast in the future because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you can practice relationships before you can uphold rules, if you practice that principle, you will have the most amazing relationships with the most amazing people.
Yeah.
Maybe that 8-passenger person should have thought of that. I don't know.
No, she thought she was giving service with her connections.
Goodness.
Parenting advice.
Bloody
which
hell.
was
Listening to that therapist.
a little too much.
I could go on a tangent, but you know what? We just
too
told you I
much.
wouldn't do that. So moving on. You know what, guys? We're so thankful that you spent some time with us today. For all of you guys who saw our post but were too afraid to answer, do you see how easy that was? That was awesome, right?
You can just email us, Marissa at addictathlete.org.
Yeah.
DM our social media.
And I'll make sure we get this post out a little bit earlier for you guys, because I think it's a good way, if you guys don't want to come on live, to chat, but it's a good way to get your questions answered, and a good way for the team to get to know you. Like we said, you guys have all heard now that this is, walking across the America Kindle.
Yeah.
He's out there changing lives. And so he's going to be one of our sober coaches. And if you are interested in becoming an Addict to Athlete certified sober coach, jump on addicttoathlete.org. You'll find a link to the program. It's all online. Yep. It's certified. You can take it for your own, education and desire to learn, or you can become a chapter in and of yourself under our 501c3.
To open your own chapter.
No matter where you are in the country or the world. We are, again, excited to be opening up another chapter here soon down in southern Arizona, and it's going to be some cool things happening. But yeah, jump on our website. Anything you might need to know about how the team operates, what we offer, who we are, addicttoathlete.org. Yep. Any final thoughts there, my lady?
No.
Awesome. Stay tuned. If you guys hadn't been able to listen to this, I'm saying this now, but it's at the end. This is going to be reposted as a podcast later this week. And continue to do all that you're doing. Jump on the social medias. Let's get you guys a team so that when the holidays roll around, you have someone in your corner, because ultimately it'll help you turn your mess into your message. The things we do for our listeners, huh?